Good morning, everyone. My name is Pablo Jaramillo. I am a PhD student in the Department of Agriculture, Education, and Communication at Texas Tech University. Today, I'm going to be presenting about training, trust, and technology, a mixed method to study Latin America extension workers' experiences during COVID-19. So this research we did with Dr. Boren, Dr. Millares, and Dr. Carla Millares. So first, COVID-19 pandemic has been affected worldwide, including agriculture and agricultural extension. Latin America provides an interesting context for exploring the dynamics of agricultural extension because of the unique blend between the public and private sector, and because agricultural extension serves many smallholders with agriculture, and by teaching them, by training them, and it is important since agriculture is the main income source for many small farmers. So as part of this study, we base in the framework of the resilience theory that has been proposed to understand how adversity affects people around. So this theory has been used also in COVID, trying to understand how people reacted during the pandemic. It's important, this theory, because it is based in three specific pillars. That's going to be the adversity, in the case of what the adversity was, the COVID pandemic, how extension workers were dealing with it. So it was like some issues causing to them, as worldwide also, as the world also were affected. The mitigating process is going to be how they were dealing with this process. So okay, now we know that we have been struggling with it. We know that this issue is here, so how can we deal? And the better than expected outcome is going to be, okay, what are the solutions that we're going to be implementing? We know that, for instance, we're not able to go to and talk to the farmer. How are we going to reach the farmer knowing that there is this limitation of getting in touch with that person? So that is the framework that we use for this study, and we're going to be explaining as part of the research. So the purpose of this study, of this method study, was to understand and to explore how Latin America extension professionals work during COVID-19. So these are the objectives that we're going to be talking today. The first one was to explore Latin America extension professional preparation to implement knowledge sharing activities. The second one was to examine outreach activities, modification, and strategies used by extension professionals. The third one, to evaluate the perceived literacy level and resources available for extension professional. And the fourth one was to explore extension professional responsiveness to COVID-19. So as part of this research, of this explanatory mixed method research, first we start with the quantitative bias that was we based on Narine and Meyer 2020 instrument. We adapted to the Latin America context. We evaluated with different experts to make sure that it's accurate to Latin America, and later on we implemented a snowball sampling from extension workers. So we mainly asked, okay, can you share this to another extension worker so we can have an understanding of what is happening? In total, we had 90 responses, but after cleaning the data, we finished with 70 responses that we used for the analysis. So how we evaluated the quantitative phase, we used descriptive statistics, and among with details to compare program directors and field technicians, because there was a difference between those who are working in an office and those who are working in the field. And for the qualitative phase, we use a phenomenological case study to give a deeper understanding of what was happening. In total, for the quantitative phase, 25 participants from the quantitative phase they decided to participate. So as part of the instrument, we asked, do you want to participate in an interview? And 25 agreed to do it. So it's important because it's a lot of people who were willing to talk about what was happening in extension during COVID times. So as in the research, 13 different Latin Americas participate in this research overall. 13 countries were considered as part of the research. And mainly, or the majority, were field technicians and program coordinators that were the persons who were more willing to participate. But we also evaluate other kind of persons that were related to extension as evaluation specialists or extension professors. So here you can see the Latin American countries that we considered as part of the research. Okay, so for objective number 1, that was to analyze the preparedness of Latin America extension professionals to implement knowledge sharing activities. As you may notice here, the first one of the one that was ranked as the highest was partnering with other governmental organizations to coordinate efforts. The second one was reach out local leaders about how your team can support or address farmers' needs. The third one was reach out or reasons to provide updates by using Facebook, WhatsApp, or other methods. And the one that was with the lowest rank was provide information to community media. So we are going to talk about this because this is giving a good understanding, as you can see here. And most of the people consider on a range, it's going to be from terrible to excellent. Most of the people consider it's good in partnering with other organizations to coordinate efforts. We are going to talk about that later on as part of the qualitative phase to understand why, what is this research, or what this information is giving us to us. So for objective number 2, we evaluate what were they doing before the pandemic and what we're doing during the pandemic. So the first one, or the one who have the highest change, was learn to work from home. And the second one was was close to the first one, was conducting virtual training instead of face-to-face meetings. So as you can see here in the screen, these two actions received a net change of 330%. So it has been a really huge change when before pandemic and after pandemic. But the one who had like the lowest change was reach out local leaders about how your team can support or raise farmers. So it was like a net change of 13%. So yeah, even though we consider it small, they're still during pandemic they decided to implement as part of their daily activities. For objective number 3, we evaluate the perceived literacy level and COVID prevention implementation. So in this one, we were evaluating, okay, what is your perception? Okay, talking about how much do you know about personal hygiene? So we asked them to, between yes and no, to rank what they consider. And after that, if they are implementing in the field. So as you can see in the first one, the action of personal hygiene is the one who had is the one that they perceive as the most. That is going to be 68% perceive that they know about that, and 64 implementing in their daily activities. For telehealth, that is the one that using different media resources as Facebook or using Zoom. They perceive that they have a 30% of knowledge about that, but 27% are implementing this. We are going to talk about the importance of telehealth later on as part of the qualitative phase of the study. For objective number 4 was to explore extension professional responsiveness to COVID-19. In this, we decided to evaluate between those, as I said before, those who were working as in the field and those who were working in an office. So it was important because the perception changed depending where you are. So there was a significant difference between both groups. And as you may notice here, well, I'm going to talk about later on as part of the qualitative phase, the findings about this subject. Okay, yeah, so talking about the first one that was to understand the ability to implement and select knowledge sharing activities. So 3 themes emerged from this phase that were institutional solidarity, social media as an extension tool, and phone and radio. So for the first theme, they, as part of being in the field, as part of the difficulties to go to and talk to the farmers, they decided to create alliance or create connections with other extension workers. So in that way, instead of fighting each other to address more people, they could work together and help the workers. So that was important because they were living outside any kind of jails or any kind of problem that they could have and looking to the benefit of the workers. So as you may notice here, they say that they are integrated with organizations. Now we need to coordinate practices to fulfill needs, and after that they create a friendship with the other extension workers. Also, we have as the second thing the social media as an extension tool. So in most of Latin America, they explain that they have more cell phones than people. So that's why they decided to implement social media as part of reach out people. So they use social networks, they create information using social network as Zoom or as Facebook, and later on they publish in their web pages so the farmers could access to it. And they talk about the importance of phone calls and radio because before it was before pandemic they were not using it because it was considered like an old-fashioned way to reach out farmers. But since it's really common in all Latin American rurality to have a radio or to have a phone, they decided to start the training by implementing this kind of methodology. So project number 2, the principal actions implemented by station professional in response. As they say that getting through technology, they were evaluating and they were using technology in order to reach out people. They say that the improvement for extension because of virtual training is cheaper than in person. So they are looking for implement this after the pandemic. And extension are working from home. They say that before the pandemic, they had less work. Now they need to work at home, and that has increased their activities. Now they need to work at home as well because they need to figure out how to contact the farmer. And one way that we explained before is by phone calls or by different sources, but they have to extend their daily activity and they have to work also on weekends. Project number 3 was explore the principle of COVID prevention resources. So 2 things emerged: extension as a COVID resilience tool. So this one, they were helping the farmer. They were aware of the problem, and it's quite related to what we talk about resilience theory. So they decided to implement some training that will help us understand about the use of different COVID prevention actions. That is going to be related to the second one, where they decided to implement hand washing masks and the use of personal protect equipment as part of their trainings. And project number 4 was the comparison between the 2 groups. So the main difference that field technicians feel that since they were not able to go and talk with the farmer, they were not accomplishing their goals. While the program directors, they were okay. We have like a specific amount of money to use. So since we are accomplishing our goals because we know that we have using phone and radio to reach out farmers, we are good with what we have been assigned to do as part of our requirements. So the conclusions of this resilience was found in the 2 phases of the study. Station professional became a reliable tool for farmers. The second main component is that extension. They are explaining that it's important to change from being conventional and use old-fashioned ways to reach out farmers to consider the new technology as part of their training. And also, it's important to evaluate these differences because if we want to see if the extension workers or the extension overall was successful, we need to evaluate the 2 phases: those who were working in the field and those who were working in an office. Finally, the recommendation will be to evaluate to consider social media such as Facebook or WhatsApp as a tool to reach out farmers. It will be interesting to know how this has been affected right now that we are finishing COVID, and how it's important this to replicate and create more models or more trainings using this technology. And also it's important that the community role that have extension workers, we know that they are the ones who are sharing the information, so it will be good to be aware of what are they sharing to the farmers, to create a good training process, and they will have the idea and the knowledge of how to use the technology, because this will facilitate later on trainings and will help them to reach out more people and fulfill all the needs that they could have. So this is what my research was about. It was interesting to learn about how extension were working and some of the difficulties that we were struggling, and how the use of different technology, of sharing with other extension workers was important as part of the COVID. So I don't know.
Let's thank Pablo first. And so we have about 5 minutes for questions, and I can help moderate. Are there questions from the audience? If not, I have a question that can get us started. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks very much, by the way. It's a very interesting and very timely, of course. I have 2 quick questions. One of them is, Do you think there'll be a permanent switch now to more virtual extension as we go forward? You touched upon it, but what do you think will be that? And secondly, I think you said you had 70 cases or individuals you were able to survey. Any differences between the countries for any reason? You know, maybe some country was more high-tech and more accessible or whatever? Just curious about those two.
Okay, so answering the first question, I know that in other countries as Colombia, they are implementing this kind of training, so they are using social media as Facebook and WhatsApp, where they are recording like small videos of 5 to 3 minutes and sharing to the farmers. So if they have any questions, they can reach out using that kind of social media or that kind of source. So it has been implemented. It's increasing. It was important. One of the participants explained that before pandemic, they were like doing a pilot study about using this social media where they had good outcomes. And during pandemic, it was successful because they already had an idea of what was going to be happening during the situation. So yeah, I think that it's going to be important to invest. I found that some countries are implementing this more than the other ones. So I know that Colombia, Mexico, they're using most the social media, the WhatsApp to reach out farmers, but other countries like Ecuador and Peru, they use more the phone calls and the radio to reach out the farmers. And regarding the second question, well, that was, I answered as part of the first one, but also it was difficult to compare because we had like 70 participants. But descriptively, I think that it was different between those who were located in Central America and the extension workers that were located in South America. So they were different way that they were addressing the issue.
Did you take into account cell phone companies and how farmers like have their cell phone plan, for example? Like, do they pay a monthly fee and they have like an unlimited plan, or do they have to pay sort of like for minutes or for data? And sort of, did you take that into account in how they were accessing extension?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
So as part of being in Latin America and as part of doing research in Latin America, I know that they are offering some plans where they have unlimited WhatsApp access. So that's what a farm extension worker was doing. So they know that there is a plan where by paying like $5, you have access to WhatsApp the entire and Facebook the entire month. So it was a good source to consider because they were having something that has been used and take advantage of that. So I think that since it's cheap in Latin America to pay like to $3 to $5 to have WhatsApp and Facebook unlimited, I know that it's common that, and that was one of the things that we don't measure, we don't consider because we were not talking with the farmer as the target population. But I think that it will be important to go and look for it in the field and to understand if it could have an influence on that.
So a follow-up question that connects a little bit is, and granted you didn't have a very large sample, but did you examine the age of the extension worker? Because we know that different age groups adopt technologies in different ways.
Yeah, so it was interesting because, and also if you want, you can access to this QR code and where is published the research, and I talk a little bit deeper about that. But the main difference was that the extension workers who were like kind of young, they perceive they use the technology more often than those who were in the more older than them. So it was important also to highlight that the older generation explained the importance of change from being conventional to a more adaptive or innovative by using the technology. So that was one of the things that it was important. The adoption was difficult, but they know that they need to do it because it was one of the difficulties in Latin America. So they found that other extension workers were using was something successful, and they want to replicate even though they don't have the knowledge. So that's what as part of the recommendation that I said, we need to, as an extension professional working in the extension, we need to make sure that we are creating or we are providing the resources that for the extension workers that they could use later on. We have to address also extension workers, all extension workers, young extension workers, to make sure that all of them have the knowledge about using technology as an extension tool.
Right, so we probably have time for one more short question.
I have a short one. Pablo, at what point in the pandemic did you collect your data, and have things evolved since that point?
Okay, I collected data, it was on October 2019 is when we started, and we finished to collect the data on November. Yes, it was like a month that we collected the data. So I think that was during the pandemic, when the pandemic was like perceived as the high, in the high level, because Latin America, it was like a different like pattern. So after the US and after Europe, we were like suffering of the pandemic. So we were in the specific point where the pandemic had been affecting the Latin Americans.
I think you may have misspoke. You said 2019, October.
Oh, sorry, 2020.
Okay, all right.
So let's thank Pablo one more time. So the beautiful part about being together face to face is if you want to learn more about Pablo's work, you can talk to him during the break time and so forth.